This is a proportion system which will ultimately make it a lot easier for us to draw the figure with accuracy. So I'm going to just talk you through the system, and then we're going to see how it can be applied to the skeleton in multiple positions. So here we have, coming right down through the horizontal lines here, we have this red line, which is the plumb line. In other words, it's the line that would run down through the center of the figure. It's really good to put that in there first, just to get a sense of where the balance might be. So the plumb line comes in, and then there's a line at the top here, which is where the top of the head would meet the system. And there's a line at the bottom here, which is going to be in the region of the feet. So we have the plumb line, we have a top line, top of the head, bottom line, the region of the feet. The next step in building this system is to find the midpoint between the top line and the bottom line. And in this case, I've measured it. Usually I have to do it a couple times to just place where that midline would be. And in this case, I'm going to highlight it a little bit more brightly in blue. So that's the midpoint of the body. So I'll just put midpoint here. And then once we have that midline, we can drop a line just below it, right about here, just sort of a whisper below that midline. And I'm going to show you now how we can find our head measurement. So basically, the distance between the top line and the line just below the midline, if we divide it into 4 equal parts, that will give us our head size. So here's one part here, that's one head, 2 heads, 3 heads, 4 heads, and then as we come all the way down to the bottom, we can take that head measurement and we can apply that from the bottom up, 2 heads up from the bottom, so 1, 2, will give us the region of the knees. So we have now a proportional figure, and I want to show you how that could work with the skeleton from multiple views. So here are 4 skeletons. They are from the front, the 3/4, the side, and the back. And if we take this proportional system, you'll see that if we apply it on the frontal skeleton, it works. If you apply it on the 3/4 skeleton, once again, you can see how the body fits in. Side view, and then back view. So what I'd like to do is just highlight some of the things that would be associating with this system so that you can start to see how the subcutaneous skeletal landmarks start to lay within a proportional system. So if we start with this frontal figure here, the very top of the skull comes to the top line. And you'll notice at the bottom here with this bottom line, it doesn't hit the toes or the heel, but rather it sort of bisects the feet. So the feet come across that bottom line. And that's really important to understand, because otherwise, if you make, let's say, the toes touch the line, then the legs are going to be too short. So one head, the top line coming down to the chin, so that's one head measurement. From the chin to the base of the sternum, that's 2 heads. From the sternum to the region of the belly button. Now I know this skeleton doesn't have a belly button, but you can also see how that lines up with the back of the pelvis. And then one more head down would come down to the region of the genitals. That is below, just below, remember, just below the midpoint. So if you have this diagram, you can see where all these points are, and it makes it a lot easier. And then don't forget, we can take 2 head measurements. We can come up from the ground, 1, 2, and find the region of the knees. So that's how it applies to the standing figure from the frontal view. From the side view, it's super similar. We have the head hitting the top line. We have the bottom line sort of bisecting the feet, but now you can see they come across it at an angle. And then the chin would take us down to 1 head measurement. From there, coming down another head would be the region of the bottom of the sternum, or the xiphoid process, they call it. Coming down from there, we have again the region of the belly button or the top of the back of the pelvis. Then all the way down to the region of the genitals, and don't forget, that is below the midline. And then once again, we can take that same head measurement, and notice how easy it was when they're side by side. You can just carry it all the way across. Take that same head measurement, come 2 heads up from the bottom, and hit the region of the knees. All right, side view, again, similar. Head hits the top, chin, 1 head down. Here, the bottom line goes again between the feet, so it's important to place them front and back of that line. Then we can come down from here. Even though you can't really see the sternum, sometimes there's sort of a flatness and then a curving in, so you can see the region of the sternum. And then from there, coming down, we have the 3rd head down to the sort of the small of the back, but again, the region of the belly button. Coming down again to just below the genitals, which is also just below the midpoint. And then 2 heads up for the region of the knees. Now, the back view is a little different. Back view, still the skull hits the top, the chin, if you can see it, which you probably wouldn't be able to, hits the bottom of that first head measurement. Then from there we come down, and since we're looking at the back, we obviously can't see the sternum, but take a look at this. This second head measurement hits the bottom, we call it the inferior angle of the scapulas. And sometimes you can see that on the figure. So 1 head, 2 heads down to the bottom of the scapulas. 3 heads down hits the back of the pelvis, which is typically sort of the region of the dimples that you might see sometimes on the back of the hips. We have 4 heads down to the base of the genitals, below the midpoint of the body. And then once again, this bottom line bisects the feet. In this case, the heel often comes in front, toes go beyond. And then 2 heads up from the bottom line, we have the region of the knees. So this system, which I've taught you, is a really great way to establish the figure in proportion, and a way that you can always have a foundation to trust for building a proportional figure.